Seeing the footage of how violently the car's bouncing when it's porpoising and with how close the drivers are sat to the impact zone where the car's hitting off the track, what are your immediate concerns?
Well, I mean, I think I mean, I haven't worked with any Formula One teams around this issue specifically, and I'm kind of assuming that the drivers know themselves extremely well. So then I also would hope that the F1 teams have got a good idea of what the forces are involved with this porpoising, and presumably they feel that they're not moving into unsafe thresholds. But then drivers are coming out of the car saying, "Oh my God, I'm feeling terrible." So presumably that's the clue that there could be a problem. So in the clips that you sent me, I could of Lewis Hamilton climbing out of his car. Physically, he looked really stiff and kind of, that wasn't a very pleasant experience. Obviously, I couldn't tell from that whether he had any symptoms that would be suggestive of concussion. So that's a very long way of answering the question. But I think my concerns would begin with what the drivers are telling the team about symptoms that they're developing from being in the car that they don't normally get. And I get the sense that they're describing an awful lot of musculoskeletal pain in their neck and back. And there's a suggestion that they may be developing headaches.
Yeah, so in that race that you mentioned where Lewis Hamilton's getting out of the car and complaining, well, you can see that he's in physical pain. He also complained that the bottom of the car went cold. And what they later found out after that was his back had went numb from where the impact is happening. So my question with that was, if this porpoising was to continue, especially as violently as it has been, what damage could it cause on like a permanent basis?
Well, so I think it'd be very unlucky if they did create permanent change. So, but again, that will be very much to begin with. If it's a new thing, going to be determined by the drivers. So the drivers are going in and presumably they're doing this in practice.
Yeah.
And they're kind of however long they're racing for. Do they only really get the problem when they do a race and they have to do it for 2 hours, or are they getting the problem when they're doing it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes? And then to what extent are they recovering outside of the race? So if they are not recovering and they feel like they're being left with ongoing symptoms, well, that would be a concern. And then it's like, where are the symptoms? Are they complaining of lower back pain, mid back pain, upper back pain? And then on the information I've got so far, it's difficult to get a sense of to what extent they're developing problems that may be suggestive of concussion, like headache, and when that's happening and how long they're lasting. I think I've heard Lewis Hamilton use the term, he's worried he may be having micro concussions. So I think from what I've seen so far, I think it's unlikely that if that is happening to some extent, it's going to give him permanent problems. But if it is new and it is giving him that, then they need to fix this pretty quickly, would be my suggestion.
In 2019, Formula One team McLaren employed a brain technology company to monitor the neurological signals of their drivers in order to collect and transmit key cognitive drivers' responses to a trackside medical team on a real-time basis. I asked Dr. Addler on the importance of this and whether more teams should follow suit.
Got that type of, so they have telemetry on everything, don't they? Yeah. And when when I was thinking about this, I was wondering whether or not, to what extent they have telemetry of the drivers, and to what extent they monitor heart rate, that type of temperature and maybe even hydration status. And I did wonder whether or not that anyone had done any work on telemetry of the brain. Now, if that is a capability that they have, obviously I just need to know the details of it, but that would seem to me an extremely sensible thing to be doing when they've got this problem.
Yeah, and then just one thing I want to end on. We talked about the forces that the drivers come over under. There was an infamous incident last year at Silverstone when Max Verstappen was clipped by Lewis Hamilton and ended up into a tyre wall in a collision that registered 51 Gs of force. What kind of an impact can that have on someone's body?
Well, I mean, when you think about the forces that they're exposing themselves to, generally, I think for most of us, it would be dramatic, but obviously they are used to it. So they're very, so they're conditioned. And then, the key thing I would say from like brain injuries is the fact that they now have got this cage. You can see that that's extraordinary in the fact that you're able to kind of bounce a car on top of it, and it avoids the contact of the car with the driver's helmet head. So that's extraordinary in terms of a safety step forward. In terms of the forces, so that type of force is definitely potentially very dangerous. But again, the way that they've constructed the cars, they've managed to kind of, I mean, I'm amazed that they don't have more in the way of acceleration, deceleration, brain injury, given the speeds that they're going and the forces that they're exposed to, which must talk to the way that they've designed the safety into the car to begin with. So I think if we were to drive our cars into a wall in the way that, or drive our cars at that speed, that would be, on the whole, you'd have massive propensity to a brain injury, but they seem to have designed them in a way that it is impressive.